Have you ever played a game that held you accountable for your own actions? Have you ever played a game that decayed at your touch, causing profound guilt and numbness? Have you ever played a game where you can become the villain? Undertale is a friendly action JRPG where the player is trapped in a buried location called the Underground, where they can meet and befriend magical monsters. The game's tagline is an RPG where no one has to die. If the player plays the good route, the story evolves into a euphoric tale about peace and overcoming past trauma. But what happens if they choose to act violently and push the world to its limit? This is what triggers the No Mercy route. This route is a bleak, numbing experience that siphons everything that was once enjoyable out of the game. The puzzles in the game are inaccessible, the lively NPCs now flee from you, and most bosses die in a single hit. When they don't, you'll wish they did. This route causes most players to feel an extreme amount of guilt and numbness, and by delving into the inner workings of the game, I've learned that this is by design. My goal in this research was to dissect the route and to understand what elements in the game cause this visceral emotional response. Undertale provides moral guidelines on what the player should and should not do. When these guidelines are disregarded, it negatively affects the game world in ways that constantly remind the player that they are at fault for doing things that they know are wrong. The first character that you meet is Flowey. In the first scene of the game, he tries to trick the player, attempting to steal their soul. He is then warded off by Toriel, who in stark contrast to Flowey is very loving towards the player. She takes them into her home, tells them that they will be safe, and shows them how to navigate the underground during a tutorial phase. Flowey and Toriel are there to show the contrast between good and evil immediately upon starting the game. They directly help or hurt the player, setting clear good and bad examples for the player's behavior. Flowey tricks and threatens the player, so the player will automatically have a negative view of him and violent actions like his. The fact that fighting other characters is bad is also woven into the fabric of the game mechanics themselves. In the fight menu, there is only one button to press, triggering a simple QuickTime event. On the other hand, choosing to act opens up a robust list of options and interactions to the player. This is an example of procedural rhetoric at work. Procedural rhetoric is the practice of using game processes in a persuasive way, and Undertale uses the strategy to dissuade players from fighting. Fighting an enemy quickly gets monotonous and repetitive, but acting is far more engaging, making it feel like the natural, correct option in the game. The farther you get through a run, the more unforgiving the characters around you will be. NPCs will begin to flee from you, leaving the game devoid of the life that all its characters added. Puzzles will be completed for you, implied to be because of the monsters that have fled ahead of your arrival. And worst of all, the main characters, once the player's friends, will develop a deep hatred towards you. These changes to the game serve to remind the player that their actions are real within this world and its inhabitants are feeling the effects. The battles in this run also become increasingly difficult, so much so that some can be considered aporadic situations. An aporia is a situation where it seems so impossible for the player to accomplish their goal that they are forced to reevaluate and make an informed decision about their course of action. This occurs during both major battles on that route, with Undyne the Undying and Sans. These fights are so difficult that they often force players to reconsider doing the bad route and quit entirely. By pushing through each aporia, the player is effectively digging themselves into a hole. They know they can stop, and they know it gets worse with every kill that they make, but they keep going anyway. If the player manages to finish a No Mercy route, they are forever held to their actions. At the end of a true pacifist route, they receive a stark reminder of the evils that they have committed. This is the ultimate consequence. A player who has pushed the game to its limit can never escape their past. Undertale can be considered a self-involved interactive fiction, meaning that it's made to allow players to insert themselves directly in the place of the protagonist. The player controls a silent protagonist named Frisk. Frisk has little to no input on your actions. They are simply there for the player to control. This allows any criticisms of Frisk to apply directly to the player, almost as if the characters condemning Frisk are breaking the fourth wall. It makes certain lines of dialogue so much more impactful because the player and their actions are able to be directly addressed. This applies especially to Flowey and his feelings towards the player. Before the protagonist arrived, he had the ability to restart time each time he died, exactly parallel to the player's ability to save. He points out that he and the player both begin to kill out of a curiosity of what would happen if they did it. He then goes on to poke holes in the player's defense that they only did it to know what happened, claims that they feel liberated by committing this mass murder. Flowey perfectly fits the description of the postmodern psychopath, a type of antagonist that is characterized by violence and criminality committed because of nihilistic views and a desire for entertainment. The game shows the player through these direct parallels that they fall into the exact same definition. This cements the player as the villain of this route, laying out just how evil their actions have been by comparing them one-to-one to the most monstrous character and main antagonist of the good routes. These methods work together to drive home a certain guilt and dissatisfaction to players who dare try this route. They make the once vibrant game warp and contort into a miserable, punishing experience that holds the player completely accountable and never lets them escape the consequences of their murders. The reminders come from every aspect of the game. You should feel guilty. You have become the villain. Thank you for listening.